Yeah, he didn't leave me a password or anything. Here's the button. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday, October 3rd policy meeting of the Board of Education. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. While I'm trying to sign on to this computer, we're just going to begin. By then, I might not even need this computer, but so we're here this evening to discuss policies prior to being moved to the next Board of Ed business meeting for approval. So we're going to start with, policy 1515, which is parent and family engagement, which is really just a policy being reaffirmed at this time. Does anyone have any questions on that policy? Oh. That's the next meeting. Policy. Oh, sorry. No, I just let them out. Policy 2200 is the sexual harassment policy that goes along with 2201 sexual harassment of students, 2200.2 sexual harassment of employees, and the administrative regulations for those alike. Those policies, if I pull them up, hold on. I have them if I can just, I thought I put them in number order, but I didn't. Okay. So in these policies, you saw the changes that were created and or the items that were removed based on attorney recommendation. Then sexual harassment in the workplace had some formatting that was changed. Have any questions on those policies and or the administrative regulations that go along with them?
They're all changes from the U.S. Department of Education, student policies, and then for the employee policies from the New York Labor Department.
And these are given out to all the staff every year.
These are posted every year, and then we do hand these to them every year. The sexual harassment policy, do they receive them by the end of the year?
Training,
Right? It's a requirement. It's a training. Are there any questions on any of those policies?
No.
And move 2200 and the like to the next meeting. 2550 is the information and data privacy security breach policy. That's just being reaffirmed. Were there any questions on that?
Nothing had to change with that with the audit.
No, not based on
This was a new
recommendations
policy that you put in place in 22, and then you asked us to review. There have been no changes to the requirements or the requirements if there's a data breach. So, are legally sufficient.
Again, if no objection, we'll move that to the next meeting. Policy 3443 was investments and administrative regulations. Again, being reaffirmed, it was sent to the attorneys for clarification and to make sure that we're not missing any regulations that needed to be in that policy. Having none, is everybody okay with the change with the policy being reaffirmed?
Yes.
Policy 3444 is our purchasing policy. Another policy being reaffirmed after being reviewed by our council. Any questions on that? Okay, policy 4100 is ethical conduct for West Hempstead School District public officers and employees. You can see where the recommendations were for changes in some wording regarding this policy. That's okay. If I need to, I'll get up. Does anybody at the table have any questions in regard to these policies?
No.
Move it to the next meeting. Policy 5120 is our district attendance policy. It's being reaffirmed after being reviewed by council. Seeing no changes, does anyone have any questions?
No.
5120 to the next meeting. Would you like these meetings? 5137 is the provision of special education services to students unilaterally placed by parents or guardians in non-public schools. This is also just being reaffirmed. As no changes were advised by council. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Okay, we'll move that to the next meeting. Extracurricular activities, policy 5144. This is also just being reaffirmed after being reviewed by council. Are there any questions regarding that policy?
No.
We'll move that forward. Policy 5147 is in regard to fraternities, sororities, and other secret societies. This is a very old policy that is just being reaffirmed. Again, again, after later. Again, this was reviewed by council with no changes. Do we have any questions on that policy?
No.
Yeah, Joe was in a turn. We'll move that to the next meeting to be approved. Policy 5150 in regard to extra classroom activity funds. Those are like student clubs and the like. You'll see the changes in bold that were recommended. I can pull it out. In bold that were recommended by the attorneys. There was some requirement by commissioner's regulation, if I'm not mistaken, for this policy.
It's Commissioner Regulation 172.3 deals with the extracurricular activity funds and the fact that there needs to be an annual audit conduction in school district records. So we added that in the policy.
Okay. You'll see that there was also a, sorry, that's the next policy.
Yes, if you don't see the red line.
Does anyone have any questions on that? To the next meeting. 51, whoops, wrong one. 5162 is free and reduced food services. The adjustments made after review of the attorney, were sent home. Anyone have any questions on that? We'll move to the next meeting. Building. Policy 6160 is the education of homeless children and unaccompanied youth, along with the administrative regulations to go with it. So there were a few changes in the administrative regulations. And there was a section put in that was recommended, if I'm not mistaken, by New York State school boards. That was all sent home. Do you have any comment on that? No?
Just to make sure it's all up to date with current compliance with the Kenny Mandel Act. So those are what we.
I had a question here.
That,
I don't recall if the new update had said it, but I know that children in foster care fall into this, but it doesn't state that in our policy. It just says a fixed or regular residence. Foster care would be a temporary residence. That doesn't really fall into that. Does that matter?
Well, it does, just because a student is in foster care doesn't necessarily mean the category of homeless. Under can even deal with, depends on the reason and how, whether it's temporary or long term. So I think you look at those on a case by case basis to make that determination. Language from the act specifically talks about hotel, motels, shelters when we added or the temporary housing arrangements is located. So it could fall under that definition, but doesn't necessarily mean in every instance it would. Again, like there's a process where the Duke School District follows. You have a Kenny Mandel liaison that would meet with the family and assist that family and actually be the advocate for the family to determine if they're claiming homelessness.
this policy is generally meant for those that are displaced, right? Like when Hurricane Sandy, and I mean, homeless is homeless, but then also for the families that are displaced due to Hurricane Sandy or like some kind of major fire or something like that, correct?
That could apply for that, and it's also unaccompanied in addition.
In addition.
If somebody comes to the country by themselves, that would fall under.
Okay, so does anybody have any other questions on that policy? Okay, so 6160 will be moved to our next meeting. Policy 9280, which is school board member ethics. Some changes were recommended by the attorneys. Some revisions regarding clarity of disclosure of matters from executive session and otherwise. Some changes in regard to general municipal law. Those were sent home to the board members. I do have one area in which I question if we should change it under the code of ethics for school board members. Simply because of how this has been this way for, the policy itself has been this way for a long time, but the way we necessarily do things is a little different. And so I just don't know if we need to or should change the wording for that. Under the area where it says rules of official conduct of individual members, which I still don't know if that's actually like falls under this. The last three bullets refer to conversation and how we distribute information or how we get the information to, say, the superintendent. So for the last, well, more than 12 years, because I'm here 12 years. So prior to me, the way we used to filter information was that if a board member had a question and or if a complaint came from the community, well, if a complaint came from the community, we would give it to the superintendent, but generally all information would filter through the board president, whoever the board president was, so that it made sure that it made it to the proper person that needed to answer the question. And then so that it also made sure that the board all the board received the answer, so everybody had the same information. So I don't know, and I'm gonna look to you for advice on this, if we should change the way this is worded, because it kind of circumvents that, and then that means that 7 people are throwing 7 different things at the superintendent all day long.
Okay, I mean, so are you saying now it says make requests for reports through the superintendent? Perhaps you could say make requests through the board president, who will then communicate with the superintendent.
I would think
At
it
least
just
if we-
streamlines it a little.
Then we have a conduit where, at least then everybody's going through the board president. You certainly can do that, as a board process. That seems like that's how you have been handling it. So I would make it consistent with how you actually do it, make your policy consistent with the practice.
I'm okay.
I mean, that just,
To the board president,
I would, notify the board president, and then somehow we have to word that to say who will
I
then,
would say make all requests for reports through the board president, who will then please let request to the superintendent.
board as a whole. Well, the responses will be sent to the board as a whole. So do we want to add a line about responses being sent to the board as a whole
Okay.
after well,
On the same line, right?
I think, where I'm talking about 2, 3, and 4. Because 2, 3, and 4 all kind of talk about the same thing, but they're telling you to go to 3 different places.
In terms of complaints, I still would recommend that.
They should go to the superintendent.
Complaints should go to the superintendent or the appropriate building personnel, so.
Well, I think they should go to I think people should refer, yes, I apologize. That's referring all citizens to the proper personnel, and that should absolutely go there. And I don't think that we should be bringing it to the entire board. I think that, I read this as then the board member is going to bring it to the board, but the board member shouldn't be bringing it to the board. That should be the community member if they needed to come to the board. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's correct, yeah.
So I think that I would just go as far as where it says superintendent of schools and end that line. No? Or am I reading it?
They're just saying basically, if you have a complaint, go to the superintendent before you bring it before the board. That's how I.
Well, or the principal or
Yeah,
whatever, like,
yeah.
I think 2 is fine the way it is.
Okay.
As long as we're all understanding it that same way. If a citizen comes to a member of the board, prior to bringing it to, having them bring it to the entire board, you're requesting that they go to the superintendent to discuss that matter.
right, either whoever this is about the people, like not the board members, but the people. That's the way I'm reading it. The board member is going to tell the parent or the citizen to go to either the principal or the superintendent or the director, whoever they're supposed to be speaking to. Correct?
That's how I read it too.
Okay. And then number 3, we're changing. And then add a line that says responses shall be sent to the entire board. Or somehow, I'm gonna word that. And then the same would hold true for number 4.
Want to substitute board secretary with board president.
Yeah, I would think that should go that way. Because that's what we do now. And then either I send it to Teresa or I send it to Dan or I send it to, whoever is sitting as the president should then send it to whoever is responsible for distributing it. We're all in agreement with those changes?
Yes.
Does anybody have any other questions in regards to this policy? excuse me, sorry. The next policy that doesn't have a name and number yet because it's a new policy was unsafe school transfer choice. It's not deemed necessary by the attorneys, so we're gonna take that off and not move that to the next policy because we don't have a policy for it.
It's really just saying you have one building or.
Right.
You don't have the ability to transfer somebody into this situation out of one.
Policies in consideration for the next policy meetings, which are in December and then again in February, is, well, you can read it, but notification of release of sex offenders with administrative regulations as well, school census, retroactive health insurance premium refunds, absence due to injuries received on the job, professional employees, corporal punishment, procedure to be followed by the board secretary to keep track of board business. And I think there were two others that were not on here, but I'll send them to Teresa to have them added to one of the next meetings. At this time, do we have anybody in the audience that has any questions in regard to the policies as just discussed? Seeing none, we're going to move all these policies to the next meeting, which is Tuesday, October 17th at 7:30 in the video conference room. I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.